Good morning, everybody, and welcome to LockdownCX, which some of you will recognise as a little bit of a play on Legal CX, which is a series of events we've been running over the last couple of years, looking at legal sector specific client experience and helping law firms understand the key challenges, opportunities, and things that they need to be doing to look after their clients. My name is Clare Fanner. I'm going to be your host today. So I've got the unenviable task of trying to keep in check our four experts. Bernie from Moneypenny, David from Conscious Solutions, Joe from TM Group, and Jim from Insight 6, who I will introduce more fully later. The agenda, just to quickly run through. What we're going to cover, I'm going to do a little bit of scene setting, just a couple of minutes, won't take too long. And then I'm going to introduce each of our experts in turn. And they are going to give you an overview of some of the key things that are going on in their space. And in simple terms, their topics are on here, which I think you've already seen as a result of the promotion that we've been doing. But we're going to start with Bernie. Bernie from Moneypenny is going to talk about the importance of efficient call handling and online live chat for legal firms. And she'll be sharing some of Moneypenny's latest insights on call behaviours during lockdown. And there's some fascinating stuff that's actually come out of the last few weeks. So really excited to hear that from Bernie. Then we're going to have a chat with Joe from TM Group, and he's going to be talking about agility and the key to surviving the new normal. And Joe's actually going to help us look very specifically at some of the elements around the property market, which is clearly going to be a specific challenge for many law firms. Then we have Jim, who will be talking about the importance of ensuring a great client experience and how it is a significant part of what firms need to be doing going forward. And then last, but clearly not least, is our very own David from Conscious Solutions, who will be talking all things digital and helping us understand what's changed, what's new, and the important things that we need to be doing. Take a step back before we crack on with that. A little bit of context. Clearly, these are really, really tough times. They're times that none of us could have anticipated just a few short weeks ago. And every aspect of our life, as we know it, has changed. And we've got challenges to understand actually what does that mean as far as our clients are concerned going forward and what we need to do to deliver a good client experience. There's no doubt we've already faced many challenges as we've all had to get used to remote working, but continue to be able to offer a service to our clients. We've changed the lines of communication. We've focused quite a lot on the challenges, but there are actually many opportunities that are arising as a result of what's going on at the moment. So we'll be exploring all of that. One of the things that I think many firms have relied on in the past is client loyalty. And so one of the things we'll be exploring is, has that changed? Are clients still loyal to us? Or actually, has the way we've shown up and turned up in this crisis affected their loyalty to us? Have they looked elsewhere because we haven't been as available as perhaps we should have been? One thing's for sure is expectations have definitely changed. Needs and wants of clients have changed. And that means that as firms, as businesses, we need to adapt and we need to do things differently. I'm going to share with you very briefly, just quick whiz through a couple of slides from some webinars that I've attended in the last few weeks that have been run by the Managing Partners Forum. And if you get a chance, I would recommend you investigate signing up to attend these yourselves because they're incredibly helpful. And what's helpful for these couple of slides that I'm just going to pull out for you, and it is just a couple, is this is attendees from over 400 professional services firms across the world. And it's highlighting some of the challenges that everyone's facing. And in some ways it's reassuring because we're not on our own. What you're experiencing, what you're going through is the same as many other firms, but we're collaborating better and in more ways than we ever have before. But there's clearly a number of issues around clients and looking after our existing clients and serving them in a new socially distanced world, but also in terms of winning work from new clients to ensure our businesses can continue to survive and thrive in the long term. So this is just highlighting the top 12 issues that are being highlighted from those webinars. Another slide that I just want to share with you is how our business priorities are altering. And this was, I thought, was quite interesting because the delegates were asked to select their top priorities, top 3 priorities over the next 12 months. And the sort of red boxes show the answers at the beginning of February, i.e. before the crisis kicked in, and the blue boxes are showing what people think now at the beginning of May. And you can see priorities have changed significantly. So whereas at the beginning of February, developing a clear purpose and strategy was high on the agenda, now we're looking at altering our business models, increasing operational efficiency. So again, some interesting challenges. And this one, what proportion of your new workflow typically comes from new clients? And what this is showing us is that we're all reliant on having a good process around generating new opportunities from clients, but it highlights the importance of looking after the clients that we already have. And then the final slide that I'm going to share before we crack on and move to our first expert is people's expectations around the future. And again, you can see the differences here from February and May, and clearly what that's showing us is that we've got some challenges in terms of generating new business. Right, enough from me. What I am going to do now is introduce our first speaker, who I'm delighted has joined us from Moneypenny. Bernie, welcome to LockdownCX. Delightful to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us. Bernie, just to give you some background, she heads up the legal sector at Moneypenny. And Moneypenny are the outsized communications provider. I think many of you are familiar with who they are and what they do. Bernie has been instrumental in the growth of their legal division, and they've got over 1,000 legal firms as part of their client base, and that's everything from, as I understand it, one-man bands right up to large international law firms. So they truly understand the legal sector and the different challenges that we have within our businesses. Bernadette is passionate about the importance of improving business communications and operational agility, and she prides herself on her insights. And that's the bit that we're looking forward to hearing from her about. So Bernie, if I may, hand over to you.
Hello, thank you, Claire, and hello everyone. So we're hoping that we can provide some really useful insight as to what our clients are feeding back to us in recent weeks. And as Claire mentioned, we look after 1,000 firms ranging from sole practitioners up into the Magic Circle who have international offices. So there's lots of different sized firms that will approach us with their pains. We'll hear about how they need to improve efficiencies, which is brilliant to see insight into that slide now about how that's on the top of their list of being able to improve operational efficiencies. And that's something that we can help law firms with. So for those of you who don't know already, Moneypenny is a telephone answering service. So we look after calls. We allocate clients with their own dedicated receptionist. So she gets to know their firm. She is someone who they know and trust. She'll answer calls just as if based in the office. So firms will use Moneypenny as a fully outsourced function, or they may use Moneypenny to capture their overflow spill to support their in-house team. But either way, we provide our firms with a robust business continuity plan. And that just leads me to remind everyone, if they haven't already, test your telephony resiliency, make sure that you do have the contingency plans in place, not just for right now, but if something like this was to happen again in the future, how quickly can you set up an operation where the calls aren't being disrupted and your customer service levels aren't interrupted. So for firms that were already using us as a fully outsourced function, not much has had to change for them during lockdown. We were handling all of their calls pre-lockdown, and we're doing that now. So their callers are none the wiser, and it's business as usual for them. But with regards to the telephony for clients that were using us on an overflow spill capacity, they have had to have our support on a larger scale. So we've had to help them with their out of hours calls, or even help them more during the day due to receptionists not being available anymore to take calls. They can't work from home, they can't access systems remotely, or it could even be due to staff being furloughed. So just to make you aware that we are there, we're providing solutions for firms who need the extra support at this time. But it's very interesting to hear what clients are saying. So we've been reaching out to clients more than ever, as you can imagine. And for some firms, they found it incredibly successful working from home. And there are things that they're going to be taking with them and incorporating in their future plans post-lockdown. So for firms that are no longer commuting and spending hours a day travelling on the train, they've been given the gift of time. So they're now more available for their clients. They've got more time to concentrate on the job that they do best. There are some firms that are now looking at cost savings in terms of office space. Do they really need that city centre location now that they can successfully do their job working from home? So some firms are actually exploring going completely virtual. And then there are those firms that are talking to us that still need an office space, but need to look at what their whole reception provision looks like. So in order to ensure that they're providing that customer service, but doing that in a new world, they're looking at closing their entire front of house operation and fully outsourcing to a service like us. They're looking at closing their waiting room area. They'll have no reception area. So these are things that perhaps might get you thinking, is this something you need to consider to your firm, or to know that other law firms are thinking about that too might glean some reassurance. But there are opportunities out there for suppliers too to enable law firms to take this direction. It's a huge leap from what we're used to. We like human contact, we like face-to-face meetings, and there's definitely a lot more Zooms happening now than there ever has been before. So it's also useful not to go backwards and take the things that we've gained from this and I guess make sure that we're utilising all those things that make us more efficient, and outsourcing being one of them. So explore outsource tech and find out what more solutions there are that could be making you more agile as a business. Thanks,
Fabulous,
Claire.
Bernie. Thank you. We've had a couple of questions come in while you've been talking, surprisingly. So if I may just ask you a couple of things. Firstly, I've got one. How long does it typically take to set up a new legal client on Moneypenny?
Well, we've had to adapt in this environment. So we used to say a couple of days, understanding we wanted to get everything right. But now that we've had to meet demand for firms looking to switch immediately, we're doing same day setup. So it's really a case of understanding about your business, getting a staff list, getting the calls diverted, and we're just throwing caution to the wind and trying to do that as quickly as possible so we can get set up the same day at the moment.
And typically in law firms, the nature of the services they're providing and how they're providing is changing almost daily because of the implications of the lockdown and how we can deliver service. Yeah. How can Moneypenny reflect that and accurately handle some of those conversations when people are phoning you?
When they're phoning in with, yeah, I think in terms of us being able to provide that level of service right now, it's allowing firms to get on with what they do best. They're having to make really tough decisions right now, and they've got bigger challenges, and telephony shouldn't be one of them when there are services like us around. I think just from leaning on, we've got an internal workplace with lovely comments that clients are saying, and it's inundated with messaging of how grateful they are that our service is in place. They can continue looking after their clients, but also knowing that from that first point of contact, the moment the client is in touch, the beginning of that journey, they're having people listen to them who are empathetic, who have the time, who have the capacity to handle that call and do an excellent job and handle those calls superbly.
Fab. Bernie, what are the differences in people's behaviours, customer behaviours, client behaviours? How's that changed? What sort of calls have you been handling in the last couple of weeks compared to normal times?
Yeah, well, it's not new news to anybody that we're having trends in areas like wills and probate, employment law, and it's all about focusing on those areas and making sure that we're optimizing them. So there's things that we can set up like customer helplines. So some law firms will use us for their main switchboard number, others will help support them with the DDI traffic. but also setting up a unique telephone number right now that could streamline anything that would help them divert business to a team that are trying to be really proactive, with whichever areas they're being hit hardest with inquiries right now. So we could set up a helpline for wills and probate. We could set up a healthcare helpline for NHS workers. So there are trends, as you'd expect, and we're expecting, as soon as the restrictions are lifted, for conveyancing to have a surge of activity, and we're ready for that. But in terms of live chat too, so live chat's another service that we offer, and as well as it being a brilliant tool for driving inquiries into the business, it's a communication tool. So we're finding that existing clients are engaging with it a bit more, and it could be because their typical surrounding isn't a great environment for a phone call if they've got noisy children in the background or whatever's going on in their households. But also it's proving successful with live chat right now at the moment, that it is being used even more. People are more available during the daytime to browse online. So we typically see live chats converting around 40% to new inquiries. And at the moment, we've just signed on a firm that found 68% of those were new inquiry chats. So it's definitely worth pursuing if you don't already have live chat as part of your website, just to reflect the way that people are changing their behaviours.
That's really helpful, and 40% converting to new inquiries, that's quite a powerful number.
It's higher now, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you actually seen law firms actually turn more to Moneypenny in these last few weeks than they perhaps have historically, to cover the fact that they're now not able to have the physical presence that they did in their offices?
Definitely, and it's a mixture of changing infrastructure to reflect cost savings. It's also making sure that now more than ever that they're available. So we're a 24-hour setup, and it could be that they're getting more calls with clients needing them to be available. So they're extending their operating hours to ensure that the calls are looked after no matter what time they come in. But yeah, I think that in terms of the service that we provide and the nature of clients right now, live chat is definitely more popular. Yeah. I think we're having more clients come on with us with live chat and onboarding with the trial, just to ensure whether it's something that suits them. But because they can have multiple logins to handle the chats themselves, as well as Moneypenny picking up any overflow chats or even all the chats, there's lots of different options on how we can help. So it's worthwhile pursuing, because it's just such a great channel at the moment, and it's proving really successful in the legal world.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bernie. There's a million other things I could ask you, and maybe we'll get a chance at the end of the session when we bring all the panelists together for a bit of a chat. Thank you. That's been really helpful, really insightful, and some interesting learning points there. I like the idea of the helplines. I can see that being really crucial to help clients get access to the information they need, and clearly chat is something that's helping many law firms. So thank you very much, Bernie, and
Thanks,
we will chat again later.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Joe, I'm going to invite Joe to chat to us now. Joe has been working with the legal and property marketplace for over 15 years, and his passion is around developing new technologies to make the ways that people work more efficient, more customer centric, and to improve the experience. And I know one of his passions is to actually help speed up property transactions, and help ensure property transactions can be delivered as efficiently as they possibly can. And property is clearly a very challenged environment right now, Joe. So I suspect you've got things that you can share about what's going on in the property market right now, and some of the things that firms need to be doing that I think people will be lapping up. So Joe, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Claire, and morning, everyone. I've got a couple of slides, so if you just bear with me, I'm going to share my screen, hopefully.
Yeah, and apologies everyone, I shared more than just my PowerPoint earlier. I think you got to see my email, so I apologise for that distraction.
Can we? I don't know what's going on here. Bear with me a second.
That's right. In the meantime, Bernie, I've got a quick question for you from Clive Smith. He wants to know if you can have some more socks, please.
Oh, I just spotted that, of course. I do actually have to go into the office to get a more comfortable chair. As you can see, I'm sat on the floor right now. So I'll get some socks while I'm there.
Brilliant. We can see your screen, Joe. It just needs, we can see the agility is key.
Okay, so can you see the PowerPoint? Is that what you're looking at? Ah, right. Okay. For some reason, it's not allowing me to go into presentation mode. So, apologies for that. But yeah, as Claire said, you know, for those of you aren't aware, tmgroup, my background in particular, is very much focused on the property side of the legal market. So I just thought I'd give you a view in terms of some of the conversations that we're having in the market and some of the impact that the lockdown is having. We all know that we're going through something that's completely tumultuous. This is, you know, one thing with absolute certainty I can say is that nobody at the start of 2020 had a plan for dealing with a global pandemic. But in terms of what that actually means, in terms of what's being seen in the market, hoping that my slides move on even though they're not in presentation mode, there's some pretty apocalyptic, if I'm saying that correctly, pronouncements that are going on. So one thing I can say for certain is that because we see it, is the transactional volumes are down. And I think the key thing and the key challenge for this market is that the recovery is going to run well beyond the time frame of the government's furlough scheme. As good as the government's furlough scheme is, and I think it's a very, very good scheme, the challenges are, it was built around the idea that this was going to be a fairly V-shaped problem. And that may well be the case if you're a restaurant or if you're a pub or something like that, because in theory, once the lockdown is lifted, everybody's going to want market because sales take so long. So going to Claire's point about what my passion is, as it were, given the fixed nature of overheads in the legal sector, losses are absolutely unavoidable, and cash flow management is key. And some firms will not survive. In fact, David mentioned to me just before we all came on air that there's another firm, another conveyancing practice that's gone into administration today. You see the headline on my slide here, which comes from Property Industry Eye, but actually referencing a Law Society Gazette report that suggests that 55% of law firms do not have sufficient cash to see out more than a couple of months if you take the furlough scheme away from them. So that's hugely challenging for the market. If I give you an example in terms of what this means, this is our business planning. I've obviously taken the axis off, but the blue line was our original projection for the amount of transactions that we would be dealing with in 2020. And the bottom is 0, just in case you're wondering if this is just an enhanced graph. It's not. The bottom case is 0. So we are pretty much predicting, we had a revised projection in March, which was a bit better than actually what we're currently projecting at the moment. So we're looking at 2 different scenarios at the moment for the rest of the year, where you can see that we are talking about being at circa a quarter of the volume that we would have normally anticipated being in the final 3 quarters of this year, which is hugely challenging for everybody. Positively, the market does retain demand. Talking to some of the big estate agency chains, actually the pipelines of sales that they had haven't necessarily gone away yet. If the lockdown goes on for much longer, it will cause a bigger challenge. But then there's also an element of saying, well, actually this market's been suppressed by Brexit and general elections, coronavirus, and now lots of people living in their house for a long period of time. But the chances are people are quite positive about 2021. But the key thing is you need to get to 2021. You need to get to 2021 without damaging your business. And that's why agility is so important. I think this period has created a tipping point in the move to working online. Many businesses have discovered that remote working is much more effective and easier than they expected it to be. I've always personally been a huge advocate of remote working. But even I was surprised actually how easy it was to take a £70 million business, which is what the tmgroup is, out of 3 large office spaces around the country and have them work 100% remotely. And the even scarier idea was that we saw productivity rise as a result of that. I think a lot of others are seeing it as well. This potentially is a double-edged sword for legal property firms. More jobs being possible from home might encourage people in this period that they should move, maybe to places they wouldn't normally have gone to for work, so maybe moving out of the cities. So you might see an increase in property transactions. But actually, if you can't offer them the same experience, you're going to find it more difficult to attract and retain staff. The period's also, obviously, by the same token, had a huge impact on the customer. And year on year, in the legal property space, there are more complaints about communication, if you go to the TPO's figures, than anything else. So people have now experienced the fact that they can work at home, carry hugely complex transactions in their workplace and for their work. And I think this is going to have a big impact in terms of patience when it comes to dealing with, organisations wanting to carry on the way that they've always done. And that involves carrying out tasks manually, in series, responding to updates rather than providing them with information updates. Law firms are already looking at embracing digital and remote ways of working anyway. There was a legal practice management survey done last year that included a lot of that. Although they were looking at a 3 to 5 year horizon, and maybe they weren't looking at a 3 to 5 month horizon in this. But some of the key outputs were that 64% of law firms reported that they saw business automation and consumer portals as a priority to improving their customers' experience. And they see customer portals in themselves as pivotal in that process. And the legal services consumer portal reported that delivery of legal services online has grown from 21 to 33% in the last 9 years, whilst obviously delivery and other methods have halved. Now, law firms aren't always known for their agility. Hopefully some of you will accept that. But there is actually a golden opportunity now to transform that market, I think. Become agile enough to chart a route through what is clearly quite an extraordinary market. And to make an operating model which will accommodate remote working and enhance customer experience through providing that level of communication and the information to the consumer, which will effectively set them apart and give them the opportunity to manage the trough in demand that they're currently getting into, and actually be in a position to quickly scale up and handle a peak. People are going to come in 21. Now, a lot of this is about investing in change, investing in people, investing in technology. The good thing about this is that most of this stuff is already available. We are not at the cutting edge of requirements in the legal sector. We never have been. We've always been followers rather than leaders in that space. So a lot of this technology is already available fairly easily and can be delivered fairly quickly. So those were my sort of thoughts there in terms of why I think agility in law firms is going to be so crucial to their success over the course of the next year or two.
Thank you very much, Joe. Some really interesting points there. I guess, and you kind of alluded to it, but one of the biggest questions that most of us want to know is, we're talking about a lot of negatives as a result of COVID-19 and the impact it's had on us, but actually, could it be the kickstart that the property market and sector needs to actually improve the way it conducts transactions and speeds things up? Could this finally happen?
Well, I think to be fair, it was happening. So I don't want to kind of downplay the work that was going on in the market already. I think this is a tipping point, as I said. I think there is a case to say, if you're continuing and your business is running fine and you haven't got any big challenges ahead, then actually change is often considered to be more hassle than it's worth. When you're confronted with a huge issue, such as we've all been confronted with in lockdown, and the property market has certainly been confronted with from a business perspective going forward, it forces you to make a decision. So we're seeing that with Mio brand, obviously, as part of our business in particular, but also the TM Connect consumer portal, where the estate agents are shut, and yet we've still got estate agents signing up to use the Mio product at the moment, because that effectively is the tool for remotely managing, so effectively, well, at this moment in time, you're not in your office, you can't really do much, actually this tool is suddenly people are going, oh, hold on a second, that might make sense. And you might also be sitting there and thinking, when I come back, I'm not going to have the same size of team. There are going to be redundancies. I mean, just get it out. That is going to happen. There's going to be quite a lot of people that lose their jobs over the course of the next 6 to 9 months. And as part of that process, do I sit there doing nothing till such time as my business can warrant bringing people back into the business? Or do I find another way of doing things? And that's where we're seeing quite a lot of people looking at.
Thank you, Joe. Joe, we're losing a little bit of sound from you, cutting out a little bit on a couple of things. I'm not, a couple of points might have been lost, but I think the essence of that came across. I guess the key question then, or the second key question is, what can law firms be doing right now to help their existing clients that have perhaps got transactions sitting waiting for kind of next steps, and what can they potentially be doing to make themselves available once things start opening up again, to ensure they're attracting some of those property opportunities?
Key thing with the existing pipeline, you don't want to lose that pipeline. You've got a whole shed of work sitting there that you want to sort of be doing. People cannot move houses currently. And that potentially causes a huge amount of fallout from that process. Now, how do you keep that going? You've got to keep the consumer, the house mover, happy that this is the decision that they made 2 or 3 months ago, and it's still going to be their right decision in 4 or 3 months' time. And the easiest way to lose that is not talk to them, is not to communicate with them, because all you're going to do is sow seeds of doubt in their mind. So I would say that the most important thing in the short term, your existing pipeline, is to keep talking to them, keep them on side, keep them up to date with all information. Make sure you know what, if circumstances change for them, if they lose their job and they've decided they can no longer take the risk of moving house, find that fact out, know it, and focus in on other things, because there's other stuff that you need to do. In terms of how do you go about changing the way that you communicate with people, the technology in here saying, there are off-the-shelf SaaS, so cloud-based technology solutions integrate with your case management platforms, or a pseudo case management platform if you're a small business and you do not use that, that are very, very easy to effectively take out. We've the core of our business, the historic core of our business, which is searches, nobody's changing provider now, because quite frankly, if you want to go to, we're seeing quite a lot of people saying, well, actually, I've got some IT people over here and they're not doing what they would normally be doing. So I'm going to use them. I'm going to use this period to get them to implement something that's very, very simple. Might be work. A lot of stuff you prioritize with his work and do that. It'll give you benefits quite quickly. I'd say that focus on what you can do in the short term. Don't try and do too much.
Brilliant. Joe, thank you very much. We have got a couple of other questions coming through, but maybe we can ask those at the end, because I need us to move on and keep an eye on times. But thank you, Joe. Some really good insights and good advice there. Basically, talk to your clients is, I think, absolutely fundamental and crucial. And looking forward, agility clearly is going to be a key part of next steps. So moving on, we're going to have a chat now with Jim Smith from Insight 6. Jim's been with Insight 6 for about 11 years, I think, and he works with over 20 law firms across the South, so understands the challenges intimately. And he works on all things to do with client experience, coming from Insight 6. And he's going to talk to us about the importance of ensuring client experience is high on the recovery agenda. So there's so many things that firms need to think about, and Jim's going to help us understand the importance of client experience and why it needs to be right up there. So, Jim.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning, everybody. I've got quite a lot to get through, so I'll be quite quick. Joe, just adding to what you've been saying, it's not all bad news, as you say. There are lots of cases on hold, as Zoopla is saying. There's parts of the businesses that your departments that will be up. Will you be ready? Is my key point. On Monday, if the government say, right, we can all get going in various stages, there'll be a lot of people thinking, what do we do now? So I want to just try and get some thoughts around that. client experience is absolutely huge. It'll be absolutely key to how your businesses thrive going forward. And we think there are three things that firms need to get straight. My colleagues Ryan Huxtable and Rich Knight, they put it as the voice of the process, the voice of the employee, the voice of the customer. So when you think about the voice of the process, Claire, Bernie and one or two others alluded to the fact that there are different processes that are changing, people getting through, but not just that. It's about offices and safety and cleanliness and spacing, etc., etc. I'm not going to go into all that, but there are lots of areas of advice such as chambers of commerce, and there'll be more coming out as going on. The voice of your employees. You know, how are they feeling? Are they confident? There was a stat came out of Ipsos Mori that said 2/3 of people still aren't confident in going out. So are some of your staff members, so if you're expecting them all come back in the office, are they ready to do that? How many come in via public transport? Because traveling by public transport is one of the key fears that people have. What will need to happen for them to be reassured, I'll come back to reassured in a minute, in their office or in their workspace, so that they come back and they're able to provide the job and the service that you want them to provide. And then the voice of the customer. So their take on what dealing with you is like. I'll go into that a little bit more in a moment. If all three are in place, you're probably in good fettle to make sure your client experience is going to be good. I like that word, reassured. It's been a difficult time, and so that is absolutely critical. Imagine if you get a Google review in a few weeks' time that says, you know, they were brilliant, I felt safe, I felt confident, I felt reassured, and they gave me great service and great advice, etc., etc. Imagine the words that are going to come through there. That's going to be really powerful. You all know the dangers of good and bad, dangers of bad reviews that come out on some of the review sites. So it's even more important in the coming months. And this world will change gradually. We're not going to get back to normal. We're going to get a new normal, to coin a phrase, and it's going to be gradual. And it's going to be a different journey. There are going to be different buying behaviors. So for instance, price might be more of an issue for people than it was before. So that's really important. People getting through to you is going to be in a different way. And Bernie was alluding to some of that a bit earlier. So the outlook is pretty good. And so are you going to be ready? And there, as been mentioned earlier, there are firms that are trading with inquiries coming in, even in residential conveyancing, which was supposed to drop through the floor. It's happening. So are you, a big question for you, are you in the short term going to be able to get your share of the business when that market gradually opens out? Just a few quick things to think about, really, especially in the voice of the customer area. If 2/3 of people aren't confident in going out, how are they going to get to you? So they're probably going to do a lot more online. Think of the numbers of older people that have never used online services before that do click and collect and online supermarket deliveries now. They're more used to it. So does your website, and I don't want to cut across David, but does your website say that you're open for business? Is your message clear and empathetic to the current situation? If you haven't received it, we did a little survey, and just a couple of 80-odd firms and their websites, 20% of websites did not explain how existing clients could contact them. Here's a big one: 36%, sorry, 36%, only 36% used empathy in their messages. There were loads of bland, functional sentences there, which didn't take into account that reassurance that people want in going through that. So have a think about the website and what does it say. We know that firms are good at face-to-face dealings, and slightly less so by phone and web from the sheer weight of stats that we've had over the years. And this is going to be important, because if that all sector stat, which was 20% of all businesses is being done online pre-COVID, that's going to increase. And I read something that said that might double. So more and more people are going to be doing online stuff. So are you ready to handle those types of inquiries? Our stats show from over the years that only 50% of web inquiries to law firms resulted in an actual discussion. Is that enough? I don't think it is. So there might be something you want to do to track that. We also know, as I mentioned a minute ago, that price might be a more sensitive factor. Our guess that none of you are the cheapest in what you do. So are your team members ready to articulate the value, what we get for what we pay, of how you work? And that adds to that loyalty aspect that was mentioned earlier as well. So, you know, loyalty might be one thing, but the price might be higher up in people's minds as it was. Think about the changes in operating practices. Do they impact the client? Does the previous journey that you had change? It most certainly will. Are timescales still prompt? So, you know, we trot out the statistic that the quickest Amazon delivery was done in 6 minutes. I'm not saying you need to do that, but are you getting back to people quickly? Are your communication methods allowing that to happen? Are staff accessible, as was mentioned earlier? Are there seamless call and web transfers? Does the technology still make people feel clients feel valued and lawyers trusted, which is your big selling point? Do you allow secure data transfer? Allow frank and confidential discussions to take place? But are they all in place? And they may be some of the things that you want to make sure clients understand as they enter into the journey. So the whole client journey might need to be mapped so that clients and your staff are clear on what happens, when and how, and the best result is achieved every time. And just as a final point, really, on this, are your team members primed and ready to handle inquiries in ways that promote you and make people think, yeah, I like the sound of them, I'll instruct them? Again, that highlighting of value, the added value, the price versus what they're going to get, only happens in around about 30% of inquiries through our stats. So again, do you need to start thinking about making sure that people are able to do that? And it might be different people, because you might have a business development team that's furloughed. You might have some good secretaries that are furloughed. It might be some key solicitors and partners that maybe aren't quite so good at that, which need to be schooled or coached in order to be able to do that a bit more effectively. So three very quick tips. Think of those three things: process, employee, client, and have some sort of plan for each, because they're going to be absolutely critical. If all those things are in place, then your people are going to be able to deliver good CX. Look at your website. I know David will refer to this, but think about it. Think about the wording. Make sure it's reassuring and it explains how things are going to work, and make it upbeat as well. Map your journeys. We've got some examples of journeys one of my colleagues produced. This is a typical flow chart. I won't share that, but you know, it's interesting looking at what that looks like now compared to 2 months ago. There's a lot more technology involved. There's a lot more remote instruction and activity involved. How is that happening, and how's that going to work? Map your journeys, as I've just mentioned, so that people engage. And are your staff ready to handle inquiries? Can they talk about why you, the value, and be able to get clients on board? And I think, just as a final thing, now might be the time. If we're starting to come out at the end of beginning of next week, and their messages coming to that, at the very least, people should be starting to think about planning for what's happening next week, because it's going to start to open out, we hope, after that. There we go. Claire, over to you.
Jim, some absolute gems of suggestions in there, and some really interesting data that you've shared. And you know, worrying stat: 50% of web inquiries don't result in a conversation. That's scary. I'm going to ask you one question before we move on, and it's coming from the audience. How should firms make sure their people promote or sell to increase conversions when we go back? So it's sort of alluding to what you were covering earlier. What's the key thing they need to be doing?
There's a bit of coaching or training maybe involved, or just some firms do this on a regular basis, but it's a reiteration, and maybe short, sharp webinar discussion like this could do something like that, get people thinking about, what do I need to say? Often handling inquiries is a you don't need a script, but you need a structure, so that you can get across good diagnosis skills, which most firms are really good at. Then that next bit, which is, right, let's tell us about the way that we work, and get across some of those highlights and benefits in there. Just need prompting, and it's an area that we can discuss if someone would like to chat about that.
Thank you, Jim. Jim, hopefully we'll have time to maybe pick up a couple of points later, although I'm conscious that because we've had some good chat already, time is tight. But thank you, Jim. Some absolute gems in there, and I'm sure that'd be very helpful for the attendees today. So we're going to move on quickly, and we're going to have a chat with David Gilroy. David, you need to switch your video on. You seem to have disappeared. So
no, but I wanted to show me without hair.
This is the new grow faster David in the new environment. So David is going to chat to us about the digital remote world and what is non-contact marketing. David's from Conscious Solutions, who I think we all know, website, social media, all things digital. And interestingly, Jim's sort of teed things up quite nicely in the build-up that actually digital has and is going to be even more important now. It was important before, but it is going forward. And one of David's quotes, sayings, don't know what the right terminology is, but something he's said quite a few times, and many people will resonate with this, is work is a thing you do, not a place you go to. Well, you got that right, David. So crack on, share some pearls of wisdom with us.
Well, I used to say I was omnipotent, but then somebody realized that it wasn't that, it was omnipresent or something like that. So good morning, everybody. I'm the pre-lunch slot, I guess. I just want to make 5 points. The first one is to tell you a story, which is current from this week. So I have 2 ways of telling stories, and this is a story about a friend of mine. So if I just say it's about a friend of mine, it is about a friend of mine. If I say it's a friend of mine, it means it's a story about me that I'm not prepared to put my name to, but this is about a friend of mine who recently referred a family matter to two law firms, both of whom were known to the person. And this is during lockdown. The first response, and this is to Jim's point, was, and this was by email, the response came back, Martin's the best person to deal with this. He only works on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Could you please phone the switchboard? Right? This is an inbound referred inquiry. And the other law firm responded with this beautifully crafted, we'd love to help them. Would you like us to phone them or email? Would you like to broker it? You know, really detailed instructions about how they could be contacted during lockdown and everything else. I mean, what a contrast between those two in terms of the user experience. So I want to just talk about, I'm going to share my screen and just show you 2 slides. So when we talk about non-contact marketing, you know, digital is the obvious way of doing it. We've seen in our world about 25% of digital marketing spend disappear from the market, okay? That's not just spend with us, that's money that people are spending with Google advertising. So we use expression doubling down, and that doesn't mean investing more money necessarily. It means if you leave money in the game, and you may not be able to leave your entire marketing budget in the game, then you can make that money go further because other people are pulling their budgets. The firm that Joe alluded to is a conveyancing only practice, clearly not with a great balance sheet. Somebody made the comment in the Q&A, you know, Martin Best, I think, about firms with good balance sheets with our government support should get through. Well, I think that's true, but not absolutely 100% true. So if you can leave some marketing money. Now, we've seen firms cut budgets. One particular firm I know, they're 25 million turnover. They're forecasting a drop this year from May to April to between 12 and 15 million. They've reduced their marketing budget from 400 grand to 100, but they're spending 50 grand of that online, whereas before they would have spent 100. So they've halved their digital spend, but it's now 50% of the budget rather than previously being 25. So that's a good example of doubling down if other people pull numbers. So just show you 2 graphs, because one of the things that we've seen is we still have a whole bunch of people who don't have COVID-19 updates on their website, and I've just shared the wrong screen. So let me get rid of that. And I'll go back and share the right one. and switch to, hopefully everybody can see a Google Analytics graph. Claire's going to nod if she can. Okay, so this is what we're now calling in our business the COVID-19 spike. Okay, in any other version of this talk, I'd have said this is something like email marketing or poor news or anything else. But the key thing to notice is the sharp increase towards the end of March and April. And we've seen this pattern, not necessarily this extreme, on lots of people's websites. So that's when everybody was in panic mode. And the way I describe what's going on is the first 4 or 5 weeks were the front edge of the storm. This week, particularly now until the end of furlough period, is kind of the eye of the storm. I'm not going to new normal because we're nowhere near it yet. But this is, people are calmer, they're more accepting of the crisis, and there's a whole theory of crisis management that goes on there. And then the back edge of the storm, I think, is from July onwards. And that could be up to 3 months, is my take on it. But if you don't have this kind of information, so this was a massive spike fueled by some email marketing. But then you'll notice the line to the right of April is higher than the line before March. So although there isn't the massive spike in traffic now to this website, there is prolonged increase in activity to the website. Now, the second one, in terms of what you can all do with this extra time you've got, is social media. Traffic to all social media platforms is up. And I'll just show you 2 LinkedIn graphs. So these are both people on the call. And this is the increase in profile views on LinkedIn pre-crisis to post. Okay. Now, I assume this person went on holiday here in the middle of April in the bottom one because they were doing not very much, or maybe they just got busy. And this top graph, this person's been just much more active with social media. And you can see a prolonged number of profile views. So this is individual activity, not a company page. So if you're getting more active, you will get more profile views. And that's all about building a personal brand as well as the firm's brand. So I think the last point to make is about communicating with customers. So the mantra that we have in our business is, I'm entirely comfortable with any of the customers who are on the call today saying, David, please stop sending us so much email. Take that on the chin, absolutely. What I'd hate to hear is somebody phoning me up and saying, David, we haven't heard from you. What the hell's going on with the business? What should I be doing? What am I paying you for? Right? So over communicate rather than under and not communicate. And I was having a call with a customer yesterday, and they were talking about starting an email newsletter, which they've never done. And I'm like, it's the perfect time to do it. If ever you needed to just tick a legitimate interest box, it's in the middle of a crisis. And you start that active email campaign, whether it's monthly, weekly, or anything else, whatever your cycle would be. But I just don't think you can over communicate with customers at this precise moment. Claire, that's all I've got.
Again, some cracking pearls of wisdom there, David, and a couple of observations. One person wants to know how they grow their hair back, and someone else says, have you not heard of gel? So clearly you haven't got away with your new hairdo. On a slightly more sensible approach, you've mentioned there social media, you've mentioned the importance of communicating. What's the best approach somebody could take to social media right now? If I've only got a limited amount of time, how do I make the most of that and make it work for me?
I'm going to go to my stock answer. It depends on the size of your network, Claire. If you've already got 1,000, 2,000 connections, just crack on with sharing information. The rule of 10 still applies. So every 10 things you do, only 2, maybe 3 are overtly about you, your business, and what you do. Everything else is about sharing information you found. And I know Lara Squires is on the call, and she and I are going to do some testing next week. I found a really good blog post which purports to say, if you do a LinkedIn post just like this with these kind of things, these are the ones that take off. And we're going to do some tracking next week in testing to see what really works. But if you don't have a big network, the time is still spent building the network. Okay. So whether you've got 500, I was on a call with a customer this week. One of them partners in a law firm, right? Small law firm, 3-4 million turnover, or relatively. One had 49 connections, one had 65. All right. And this is a man and a woman in their late 30s, early 40s. I mean, that's a shocking statistic. Maybe people aren't as diligently doing it as you or I might do. But I think it's build a network if you haven't got one, and then worry about the activity.
Okay. There's a lot of chat, there's a lot of noise online. How do we make sure we're making the right noise, saying the right things, and sort of joining that up with one of the specific questions? I think people are still very much in that I need reassurance, I need guidance space. So how can we do that intelligently and helpfully and not get lost?
Yeah, well, there's a friend of mine called Paul Shrimpling. He works with accountants predominantly, but he came up with 3 phrases. He said, what customers want to hear from you, and some of these are difficult for me, they want you to be calm, they want you to be collected, and they want you to be have consideration for them. Okay, so my natural state is jazz hands, yeah, high energy, everything else. I have not been phoning up customers saying everything is fantastic in the business. You know, I can't, what do you mean? It's not great. We have 16 people out on furlough leave out of 39. Worst afternoon of my life having to make those phone calls. So this isn't business as normal. And I don't like people who are communicating saying we're open for business. Yes, we're open for business, but it's not business as normal. It's business as abnormal. So I think if you think about those 3, calm, collected, and be considerate in terms of your time that you give people, whether it's the pay it forward principle, which I've always been a big fan of, whether it's, we had people phone up saying we want to cancel our contract. I mean, we're talking about a £5,000 a month contract with 9 months left to run. Now, we all either work in a law firm or work for law firms. You're not going to go head to head with them. They're going to find a way of getting out of it. But what's the point? Because you're never going to get them back. So that shows consideration for the situation that other people are in. So I think those 3 C's work really well, Claire.
Okay, thank you, David. That's a really useful pointer. Now, we are 12 o'clock, but I'm just going to keep going for another 5 minutes for those of you who are able to stay on, because it'd be nice to just sort of wrap things up and just have a quick sense check with each of the experts. So I've unmuted you all, so you're all, I can hear you all, not the attendees, obviously. And really, I suppose, if we start with Bernie first, I guess, if there's just one thing that you would urge law firms to do with regard to looking out for their clients, what would that one thing be, Bernie?
Yes, to embrace outsourced services. There's definite cost efficiencies, but also in terms of the client journey. That's the main reason law firms come to us, and they know that clients are being looked after, and it's peace of mind knowing that they're enhancing their client experience by looking after them from that immediate point of contact. So it sounds cliche, but walk in your client's shoes. How contactable are you right now? Are you offering out of hours support? Do you have visibility online that encourages engagement like live chat? So look at all those different channels and just feel as a client yourself, how are you supporting them right now, and how are you accessible? So just grab new technology. We're offering digital switchboard for free for 3 months for law firms. Zoom is free. There's lots of free tech out there, so embrace it and use it right now. Take advantage of what outsourced services there are.
Good advice. And some law firms will be sitting there saying, yep, that's great, but how can I blend that with my existing resources? Because clearly there's that challenge of, we know it's going to impact on resources that law firms will have available to them. We don't yet know the full impact. Is that something that businesses such as yours and the other suppliers out there can do seamlessly to fill the gaps, if you like, and provide interim support if it's just interim, long-term if it's long-term?
Yeah, I mean, the brilliant thing about the legal sector is that once they start using Moneypenny, they don't tend to go back to how things were before. But if budgets are here and call volume is here, and you need to look at reducing your overheads while still looking after your callers, there are things that we can do, technology elements, to ensure that it sits well within your current resources. If it means allowing to protect jobs and keep receptionists doing what they do best, but supporting them so that they have more flexibility to take lunch breaks, to work around childcare, to work around the hours that suit them. We can be there to fit within your current infrastructure. So I guess take a step back and look at the gaps that were highlighted due to lockdown and find out how to start filling them again.
Thank you, Bernie. And I guess same question for you, Joe, just you're going to give from a different perspective. What's the one thing, you've talked about agility, you've helped us understand what's going on in property market. What's the one thing you would urge firms to do around looking after their clients?
Well, it's communication, I think, which is kind of what I said sort of earlier. I mean, I think there's the communication in terms of sort of phoning them up and talking to them and getting to understand their feeling, which I think is really, really important. But also making sure that they're aware of what's going on. I mean, that is the biggest reason that property transactions fail, because people are sitting there and they're not quite sure what's going on. The other side said they were going to have the funding in place by now. Why can't they get the funding in place? And it could be because the valuer can't get out to see it. Valuers aren't able to come out and look at the property. But they said that they didn't need a valuer at that stage. Maybe they've gone back and maybe the lenders changed their rules and blah, 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 blah. And it's that sort of lack of confidence which can cause things to collapse. I think that's where, you know, a good property lawyer should be able to reassure people, got this, don't worry.
And that ties into the reassurance message, which, as we know, is high up on the agenda at the moment, as well as empathy. So, Jim, biggest opportunity out there right now for law firms? What can they be doing to look after clients and by in turn look after their business?
Well, to start with, those three things. What did we say they were? The process, the voice of the process, the voice of the employee, the voice of the customer. Think about those three things that will get things organised, and I think for the voice of the customer, map the journey, and we can help with that, or you can do it yourselves, or however, or you can give some advice anyway, which starts to get right. What are the things that we need to get right so that this new process works for everybody concerned? And the second thing I'd say is talk to us. We're providing loads of free stuff. There are 25 others of me countrywide. So there'll be someone not too far away, or link in with us, or connect on Twitter. Talk to us. We've got lots of stuff that can help.
Some good pointers there, and I think that the point about listening to employees and staff, but also mapping the process, understanding what it's like when somebody phones up, fills an inquiry, or has to deal with someone. I think that's really crucial. And David, similar question really. What's the one biggest piece of advice that you would give to law firms right now that will make a difference to them and their clients?
I think it's too clear. It's double down if you've got the cash, and over communicate. Okay,
good advice. Right, we have overrun. There are lots more questions I could ask, but I won't in the to let everyone get on with their day. Firstly, thank you, experts. It's been really insightful, helpful to hear your views and to get those different perspectives from covering off some slightly different angles. One of the questions that somebody's asked is there a handout that could be sent to participants that summarises the key points discussed today? The answer to that is yes. You'll get a link to the webinar, and I'm sorry, I'm going to commit you all to just dropping me, my panelists, the bullet points summarising those key points that you picked out. The top three, I sort of think I know them, but just to make sure I've captured them. So yes, we'll drop you a line to confirm that. Sorry we didn't get to answer everybody's questions as they came in, although I know I could see Bernie and Joe in particular were responding to some of the chat and questions coming up. Bernie, sounds like you're going to be busy sending socks all over the place. But yeah, there's some great questions coming through. Lots of really good stuff there. And I think fundamentally, the underlying messages here are about talk to your clients, keep close to them, make sure you've got the right processes and people in place to be responding to them when they get in touch, and make yourselves available, make sure you're open for business, and keep being agile, keep being adaptable, because what this has taught us is that we need to be able to change and we need to be able to adapt, and that has to start with the client at the centre of everything we do. Right, I think we're there. Sorry for overrunning, but it's because we've had such great points coming across. But thank you everybody for your time. Thank you for joining us today, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.